very dramatic. I actually sat next to him at a birthday party for someone, and I don't think Berkshire, or actually the future of the United States, is the future of Berkshire or the future of the United States is going to be dramatically changed by what the Brits do. But I think certainly if I were to vote on it, I would vote that would stay in.
I mean, in the past when we've talked to you about the EU as a concept, you've offered some criticisms and some just surprise that it's lasted as long as it has, because originally the setup wasn't
I'm not necessarily surprised.
Centralized.
I will be surprised if it lasts in something very close to its present form for a long, long time. Now, I'm not necessarily surprised that it's lasted this long. I mean, anytime you put something together that required all of the political will in all the different countries, there's going to be a great attempt to make it work. But I think it has flaws in it. And incidentally, we had flaws in our Constitution. That's why we amended it. So it isn't. That doesn't mean they're fatal flaws, but they'll have to be, I think, addressed in some way or another in future years. I'm all for the concept, but you took in the monetary union, you took whatever it was, 17 or so countries with vastly different economies and cultures, and I would say that if you tried to take 17 countries in North and Central and South America and come up with a common currency, but they had different fiscal policies and different cultures, there would be a lot of strain. I don't think it would work. I mean, it would take it would take a major modification in the behavior of certain countries to make a North American or a Western Hemisphere monetary union work. And that a similar problem exists in Europe, and we've seen a lot of manifestations. We've seen strains and cracks, and I don't think they've been permanently corrected.
If the UK votes to leave, I mean, that's kind of a huge deal. It would be the first of things falling apart. It would be one of the major strengths of that union, outside of France and Germany, who are really the two biggest pillars.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be earth-shattering to some extent to the EU, and I wonder how that would have implications on the financial system around the world.
It would be a big deal. I mean, if Virginia had pulled out of the 13 colonies or something, and there were certain colonies, obviously, that were on the edge about whether what happened in Philadelphia was something they could accept. So a major player saying we've tried this for a while and we'd rather go it alone, it's a major factor. The world doesn't come down or anything, but it would be a big step backward. Even though they aren't in the monetary union, it would be a big step backward.
Hey, CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos.
5 12-ounce Cokes a day, and that's about 700 calories. And I've been doing it more or less all my life. I can't imagine anybody that feels better than I do. I mean, I'm happy. I enjoy life. And I've always wondered if I'd had a twin and he had to eat broccoli and asparagus and Brussels sprouts and done it every day, and I'd been drinking my Coke and eating potato chips, and there's some cookies that also have 100 calories per ounce. Which of us? I think the other guy would be gone. I mean, I think he probably would have committed suicide, actually. And he certainly wouldn't feel as good about life as I do. I feel good every day.
It is an example of what's called a cascade, where consensus becomes fact. And we've had in the past that red meat causes heart disease, which we now know probably isn't. It's not that simple. And I've talked to Andrew about this. Looking to diabetes or obesity, even the best study that I've seen, there's all these caveats that it's impossible to do a controlled experiment where you get rid of all the other external factors to actually pinpoint what's going on there, because there's genetics, there's all these different things. But it becomes, consensus suddenly becomes fact. And it's just, and it's hurting Coca-Cola right now. And as a shareholder, there's also microaggression and safe zones. And, the world is a little bit crazy right now, Warren, in terms of political correctness.
Yeah, well, I'll make 2 points. I do think you live longer if you're happy. On balance, I would bet on the person who's extremely happy, living longer than somebody that's sour every day of the year. But beyond that, I mean, if you eat 3,500 calories and you burn up 2,700, I don't care what it is, you're going to get fat, and it's a question of how much you put in and what your metabolism is, and at the annual meeting, we talked about Coke in the early part, and when I went to lunch, I bought 3 candy bars, and each one of those candy bars had over 200 calories, whereas a 12-ounce can of Coke has a little under 150. So one of those candy bars, you're getting more calories and you're getting a lot of sugar, and I just think it's a little crazy. They've been selling Coke since 1886. They sold sell 1.9 billion 8-ounce servings a day. That's 690.
GMOs, in my book, even CO2. But I mean, all these things at this point, the cascade of where consensus becomes, unquestionable dogma in science. It's just we're living in a weird age.
Hey, CNBC fans.
Through a lot of your companies.
Sure.
And you made the point over the weekend that as far as the supply, how does that change your opinion of Walmart or your relationship with the company?
Well, I understand why they're doing it. I mean, in significant part, I'm sure it's in reaction to Amazon. I mean, I believe that Walmart's online business, and this may be worldwide, I'm not sure about the figure, but you're talking 12 or $14 billion, and you're talking about Amazon having annual gains of numbers like that. So it was just as Walmart was totally underestimated by the Searses of the time and everything. I mean, the idea that some guy in Bentonville with a pickup truck was going to take them to the cleaners, they was beyond their thinking. And I'm sure that was the situation at first with traditional retailers at Amazon. You want to be underestimated if you're a new guy in the game, and both of those guys came in under the radar screen. But Walmart, actually with their own history, and then seeing what is going on at Amazon, knows they have to play big in e-commerce, and they have certain advantages in having stores all over the country, which can act as pickup spots and that sort of thing. But they are under a lot of pressure, and I mean they're a huge, powerful company, but they still. You were running Walmart, and you looked out 5 or 10 years, and you saw what Amazon was doing. You would feel that the time to go after them was not 10 years from now, but now. And so I think partly in response to that, a year or so ago, they, maybe a little less, they went to, I think, probably all their suppliers pretty much, and in a number of different arenas, said we want to tighten up the terms, either in terms of pricing or in terms of allowances for warehousing or in terms of dates of payment or that sort of thing. I mean, they're feeling pressure from another retailing form, and I think I'd do the same thing in their position. Mm-hmm. But they've got a tough competitor.
Does it still make it worth doing business with Walmart with your suppliers? Did your suppliers go ahead and say yes to those terms?
Yeah, we said yes.
So you still see value there?
Yeah. Walmart is a terrific customer. And incidentally, historically, they've had a reputation for being very tough on suppliers. They have. But they haven't been. That's sort of a false.
So the reputation's not deserved? I mean, the reputation that they've built is not a deserved one based on their practices. They've been. They
have not. In our, we sell them at Fruit of the Loom, we sell them at Granules. I mean, we sell them 1,000 different ways. They have not been unreasonable over the years in putting undue pressure. In fact, I would say that there's certain other retailers I can think of that have put even more pressure on in the past. But there's going to be pressure. If you're a supplier of any big retailer, you're going to face pressure. You're going to face it if you supply Amazon.
Hey, CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the...
Able to do wiretapping when it gets appropriate judicial review. It's been able to see bank accounts. And there should be a debate about, is that still an important tool for the government to do its job, and exactly how do you make sure that's not abused, and then how is it done technically? We're at a stage where all of those things could go completely dark if that's the choice that people make.
In terms of Microsoft, though, it just last week, I believe, filed a suit with the government saying that it shouldn't have to hand over anything all the time with a blank check, so to speak, of any request that comes in from the government. How do you find a balance?
Well, there's actually 2 issues where Microsoft is saying to the government the policies today aren't quite right. One has to do with information that's outside the United States and how they go about getting that. The second one is that when they do come and ask for information, except in exceptional cases, that shouldn't be invisible to, say, the company that it's being asked about, that should be a slightly higher threshold to keep it quiet. And right now, these issues are playing out in the courts. I think eventually a lot of this will move to the Congress.
Warren, how do you see this? We've talked a little bit about it in the past.
Yeah, I don't think either the claim of privacy or the claim of security should be absolute. I mean, I think we live in a far more dangerous world than existed 100 years ago or 50 years ago, just in terms of the amount of damage that can be inflicted. And we certainly have plenty of people that have got a strong, or even countries such as North Korea maybe, but that want to inflict incredible damage. So I see no, I would not want privacy to be an absolute.
You want the government to have some?
I want the government, but I think it should be. You also don't want somebody that can walk into any courthouse and get all kinds of information when they're just fishing on something minor. So I think, but I do think it's important when there could be some important information that it not go through 5 appellate courts or anything like that either. I think you should get it very fast, and therefore I think you need somebody at a very high level who, if they request the information and it goes to a judge, it gets done very promptly. So whether it's the Attorney General or the President of the United States or whomever, I think there are occasions when we want that information fast, and we don't want any question about having it wander through the courts.
Charlie, your thoughts?
I totally agree with Warren. I'm even more extreme.
How so?
I just think that we want the government to have huge amount of power to get information, particularly in dealing with possible terrorism. And we want the procedures to be simple, effective, and quick.
Hey, CNBC fans.
All the areas in which they compete and apply the Justice Department test to it. But it sounded initially like, that they were putting together 2 companies that were either actual or potential competitors in many ways. And that's the job of the Justice Department. I mean, we have a Sherman Act on the books and the Clayton Act. They are to look for when things are anti-competitive. And my guess is that certain competitors of those 2 companies objected strenuously, and it was not a surprise to me that deal fell through. It's a very tough thing to make a decision. I mean, they've let certain airline mergers go through that reduced competition somewhat, but the industry was doing so poorly that the government probably decided that it would be a more efficient industry if it was reduced in numbers. But if you tried to do it one more time or something of the sort, my guess is that they would say, now, wait a second, this is getting a little too cozy.
I mean, if you look at the oil field, though, I mean, that's another area that's been pretty decimated just by the price of oil. Obviously, prices come back up. We're back at $45 now, but it's been pretty hairy for over a year with oil prices. I guess they just look at that a little differently.
Well, I'm sure that has some effect on what the Justice Department is looking at. And I mean, conditions do change while it's under review. But if the directors of 2 companies really like the deal too much, you may have an antitrust problem.
Hey, CNBC fans.
With this true news, money under a mattress rather than a bank if negative interest rates kick in. Buffett, the chairman and chief executive of conglomerate Berkshire Hathaway, said Monday Berkshire did not try to profit from global central bank monetary policy and that low oil prices were beneficial to the U.S. It's a fascinating movie to watch, Buffett told cable television network CNBC. If currency in a bank is worth less than currency in your hands, that could produce something in the way of behavior, he said. It's a different world. If you have a lot of money in euros, as we do, you're better off putting it under your mattress than in a bank. For more uncensored news, views, and information, there's only one website that you need to go to, and that's True.
And there were so many people who were here who were wondering your thoughts on the election. You've seen a lot of different elections. What do you think about what we have seen to date in this current cycle?
Well, it may say I downplay. The election is enormously important. I mean, whether electing the wrong president can permanently damage the U.S. economy, the answer is no. I mean, we've had 44 presidents so far, and they haven't all been gems. But this country will move forward regardless. And there's no need to make America great again. America is greater than it's ever been at this point, but it's going to become ever greater. And it's just, this country works, and it works in a way that blows the mind. I mean, in the 20th century, the Dow went from 16 to 11,400, and we had 2 world wars and a Great Depression, and we're just starting. I mean, just think of what your life was like 20 or 25 years ago compared to now, and that's going to keep going. So no one person as president, it makes a big difference who is president, but it doesn't make it's not going to change whether America moves forward economically. Your children are going to live better than you if we elect 3 bad presidents in a row. I still care very much about who's president.
Well, just this cycle itself, I think it's been really interesting to watch how both the Republican and Democratic Party have had trouble with people who are looking for outsiders. They don't seem to trust the establishment or like the establishment at this point, and that's played out very visibly in this primary season.
Yeah, I've never quite seen it like this. I mean, in both parties, I mean, you've had Bernie Sanders come from 3% to close to 50%. You've seen Donald Trump come from nowhere with no political background, and people are now it's primary voting, so you bring out a certain portion of the electorate for primary voting. But you are seeing people say very loudly that they don't like what's happened in Congress. They don't like what's happened in media. They don't like what's happened on their job. You know, whatever it may be. It's one of the great protest votes of all time.
Why do you think that's happening? Why do so many people feel so disaffected?
Well, bad things certainly happened to them in 2008 and 9. I mean, you know, in terms of nothing's more sacred to most people than their home, and millions and millions of people had trouble with their home ownership. They had their vision shattered about their home, which was that it couldn't help but go up in price, and they refinanced it. So here, their most precious asset, in many cases, was either taken from them or they developed worries about it that they didn't have earlier. And then they saw a stock market tank, and then they saw no one go to jail, and then they saw Wall Street continue, and rich people continued to get much richer. I mean, the Forbes 400 have all-time record net worth. So all of those factors, and probably many others, play into people feeling that even though America is doing well, they aren't doing as well as they should.
And as a result, they believe that the system is rigged against them. Are they right?
Well, they've heard this. They've heard that term, the system being rigged against them. They feel I would feel a pain in the heart. You know, like you know, the girl I've been pursuing for years left me or anything. They're electing the wrong president and permanently damage the U.S. economy. The answer is no. Your children are going to live better than you if we elect 3 bad presidents in a row. There's certain people that you do not want to try and beat at their own game, and certainly Jeff Bezos would be number 1. I mean, that'd be like me playing chess with Bobby Fischer 40 years ago. That'd be all over on the first move. People can always look back and say, you know, if you've done this or that. But a lot of those thises and that's could have produced way worse results. I do think you live longer if you're happy. I would bet on the person who's extremely happy living longer than somebody that's sour every day of the year. Yeah.
Hey, CNBC fans, thanks for checking.
A lot of political cycles play out, and season up against what you've seen in the past.
Well, I liked it a lot better in tone when Adlai Stevenson was running against Ike Eisenhower. I like the politics of that era better than I like the politics of this era. I don't like the gerrymandered legislatures where the idiots of each party are in control and make nasty deals with one another. I don't like the way politics is developing.
A lot of discontent on both sides of the political spectrum. If you look at either one of the political parties right now, they're having issues, whether it be the Democratic National Convention looking out at Bernie Sanders still running and running pretty hard, whether you look at Trump, who's a complete outsider, who now looks like he is in the pole position to take over the Republican nomination. You've been a lifelong Republican. What do you think about the situation you're facing in your own party?
Well, in my own party, I think the future looks a lot like the charge of the Light Brigade against the cannons of Balaclava.
Half a league, half a league? Half a league on?
Yes. I like that politician who said his party was trying to buy a ticket on the Titanic after he'd seen the movie.
That was Kasich, right? Or no, that was Lindsey Graham. I think who said that, right? If he wanted to run as Donald Trump's second on the ticket?
I think either of our 2 main candidates are likely to lead the charge of the Light Brigade against the cannons.
Andrew has a question that he'd like to get into. Andrew?
Yeah, you know, guys, the question I wanted to ask, I was actually thinking about writing a column about this for tomorrow. It's just the idea that so many young people today, I don't know if you saw this poll from Harvard a week ago, so many young people, millennials, claiming that they don't want to identify themselves as capitalists. Some of them actually identify themselves as socialists, and what you think has changed or whether you think anything has changed in this country given the political mood.
Well, I think in college there's always been some tendency to want to join in the movement of some sort. I mean, it's a time in life when you're sort of breaking loose from your parents' beliefs, perhaps, and they have a concern about, and so he becomes their vessel, and he gets a lot of votes.
Charlie?
Well, I think Bernie Sanders is a true believer. It just comes through totally. But he's a true believer in the sense that Eric Hoffer used the word. He's a person that will never believe disconfirming evidence once he's reached a conclusion. And that's not the Munger system.
Bill, how about you?
Well, you know, there are things like free trade that is not doing too well on either side of the political spectrum. That you know, I wish the case for that was better articulated. So, you know, will young people, as they grow up, embrace capitalism? I think so. Sure. It's a great system. We certainly need to tune it. We need to look at the excesses. And you know, I'm actually pleased there's more debate about how taxes should work. I think that's exactly what you want in a democracy.
Hey CNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Here you're going to find videos packed with all of the information that you need to be...
Because you've got the average drivers doing less than 10 hours a week, it can become a safety net for a city. Like, oh, manufacturing plant need to add a little extra income to their job where they're not seeing the income mobility that they're looking for. And so these are really positive things for folks who are, again, just trying to make ends meet.
Excited that you guys were coming in today.
One of the most fascinating things for me to watch is the city of Austin, which is, you know, I think unquestionably one of the most innovative cities in the country for Uber. And they're in this pitch battle with Uber. The political class is against Uber. 25 years living in Austin, and this is someone on the right side of the political spectrum saying that Uber and that disruptive technology that you all are bringing to the this whole concept and all the different things that you bring to the table here, and why that's not being embraced in Austin, Texas, rather than this huge fight that the political class is putting on to try to stop Uber from being able to do what you do very, very well in Austin, Texas. And I'm just curious about your observation of that.
Well, look, I like to say that, you know, the taxi rules that exist today, right? These old rules today, there was, once upon a time, those were the new and controversial rules way back. And I like to say every new and controversial rule has a right to become an old rule. But then it also has the privilege of being replaced by new rules that bend towards people and towards progress. And so we've gotten into a situation where some of these old rules have become protectionist and have essentially outlawed competition. And you know, ultimately those things need to change.
Right. Yeah. Policy question for you. One of the things you're doing is talking about employment, and at the same time, you're also working on creating autonomous vehicles and doing all sorts of work with Carnegie Mellon folks, or the folks outside of Carnegie Mellon now. And so how do you square that? How far are we off from that? And what are you going to do then when all of a sudden you're going to have to talk to a lot of workers who are going to be this whole debate's going to get flipped around?
Yeah, well, look, you know, autonomous cars, driverless cars has been going on for almost 10 years. And it was really started in earnest on the commercial side by Google. Why? Right. Well, because 1 million people a year die from cars. Because probably tens of millions of people are getting injured. Because, well, when you're behind the wheel, like, the quality of life is just, you know, it's a very stressful thing. I'm from Los Angeles. I've literally spent contiguously years of my life behind a wheel on the 405. And so there's just so many progress in technology is about. And so this kind of technology is happening. And so the question for Uber is, do we do we resist the future or do we find a way to become a part of it? Right. But if we're going to find a way to become a part of it, if we embrace it, then how do you optimistically lead through it? How do you partner with cities as that transition happens? And the fortunate thing is that it's going to take a while. Right. And the fortunate thing is that that transition is going to take a long time. And to be honest, there's going to be, I mean, that transition literally could take decades. Okay. And so we
when Google says we're 5 to 10 years, you think that's too optimistic?
Well, you can't really drive an autonomous vehicle.
Sit in the back of one.
Look, I definitely think in that time, a lot of autonomous vehicles out there, but by that time, it will not have replaced everything.
And technology's been changing. I mean, you think back through the history in the agricultural side out in California, particularly when they came up with a new type of tomato that could be mechanically picked. And all of these people who were picking tomatoes lost their jobs.
But I think what's
technology is what continues to change, and we'll manage this. I mean, our challenge, next big thing that will use the educated workforce that we better be working on in this country today.
Well, that's it. We're planting the seeds 5, 10 years out, but working also to mitigate the inevitable unintended consequences.
50 years ago, 80 years ago, when there were operators that had to physically switch. And then look at today. Uber's 5.5 years old. This year, we're bringing over 1 million drivers on the platform in the U.S. alone, maybe close to 2. And so who would have predicted that 5 years ago? And so there are going to be other Ubers, other companies that come from nowhere
other uses for labor.
that create huge opportunities for people who want to work in new ways.
Hey, CNBC fans.
I had known each other for a couple of years, few years now, and we just kind of had a connection from the beginning. We just sort of,
you're into sleep
there's
too?
a simpatico thing on building companies. Mm-hmm. Say, look, on my board right now, the non-common board seats, right? The preferred shareholders, they're financial folks. I like to say they're chess enthusiasts, but actually, as a CEO entrepreneur, I play chess, and I play chess 60 hours a week, and I needed a fellow chess master at the board level.
So this is your chess master,
for sure. And there's a whole bunch of other things, of course, that Ariana brings to the table. That's obviously really important and very valuable. Having her, at the highest level at Uber, and we're really excited.
So how did you just call her up and say, hey, you want to do this? Did you say yes immediately? Well, give us a little bit of the
what happened
backstory.
Is that we were having dinner in San Francisco, and it was his girlfriend and Emil Michael and his girlfriend and I, and halfway through dinner, he says to me, can we meet tomorrow to talk about something? And I was thinking to myself, we're having dinner, and we want to meet tomorrow to talk about something? Okay. So, something, and he asked me, and what I loved about it, he said, we need to have like 3 long sessions to walk you through everything, through the big, bold bets for the future, through the controversies, through the cultural values. And the final meeting was last week at my home in LA, when for 4.5 hours, Travis circled my dining room table, did not sit down at all, talking to me about everything. And that was it.
And that's how it happened. Let me ask you this. Is this in advance, and Becky was saying it, I think somewhat sarcastically, we were watching the Twitter news and how difficult some of these things are. Is this in it, and she had said, I can see why you don't want to go public. Yeah. Or now I understand, or when will you? Yes. Is this in advance of going public? Is there something going on here that we need to know about?
I mean, you guys have heard me answer this one before. I mean, I am your classic founder entrepreneur that's way more into product innovation and building a company than I am like thinking about liquidity. This is about building the company. You guys have seen me over the years. It's always been that way for me. And I've said, even on CNBC, that we're going to take as long as we possibly can to go public. And so it's just not top of mind right now.
Well, Oriental Trading, we're coming off of our best year in 9 years. Record high employee engagement, customer satisfaction, and record high profitability. And the fourth quarter was very strong for us. What we're seeing this year, starting in January and year to date through the first 4 months, it's gotten a little bit more challenging to drive the top line.
Especially, that's a reflection of what we're seeing with GDP overall.
Especially in our consumer segment, because we sell to consumers. We also sell to organizations, schools and churches, and we sell to businesses. And those latter two are doing relatively well. So the more challenging piece is in the consumer piece. We're seeing orders are up, but average order is down. We've seen relative pockets of strength. We had a very strong Easter season, and Easter was a week shorter. And so we pushed on a little bit of the marketing. We had good result there. Sales were up for Easter about almost 5%. So we feel good about that. Birthday is strong, parties, but some of the more everyday type of business. And so it feels like the consumer is definitely, she's watching her dollars a little more carefully, spending where she needs to, but being a little more careful on some of the things that are a little more discretionary. Mike,
how about you? Because Benjamin Moore is definitely a top-of-the-line paint.
And interestingly is sales of existing homes. And in March, existing home sales were up 5.5%. So if you look at the news that has come out relative to GDP having slowed down, consumer spending in general having slowed down, we haven't seen that. And my hypothesis, I'm not an economist, is that disposable income, if you look deeper, is up, which means that consumers have saved more and they've paid down their debt. And I think what that's translated to in our business is a greater spend on their home. So Benjamin Moore came off a number of records in fourth quarter of last year. This is the best first quarter that we've had in 8 years. So we're seeing double-digit growth. And so I think the housing market might be just a little bit more positive than the general consumer is what we're seeing.
That's interesting because we've seen things, some of the housing numbers have not been fantastic, but you say it's the existing home sales that are really the most important to watch.
And new housing starts is different, but the consumer, the builder's sentiment is actually strong looking forward. And I think we've seen our competitors come out with good numbers in the first quarter in architectural coatings, and we've experienced the same. So if we look forward, and I think the real exciting part for us is the millennial group. There's 92 million millennials out there. Many of them still renting because they saw the 2008 bubble, and those people are going to be coming into the housing market over the next 10 years. So as we look beyond this year into the future, we think there's going to be a very strong demand for the products we carry, and it's a premium product, and we tend to not be as affected.
Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about competition because you both have to deal with constantly changing competition. And Sam, one of the things that I noticed was an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that just said people are really looking for free shipping. And I think they quoted something that said more than half of the last year's orders from the top 30 retailers or something were things that came in free shipping. And that was up from 33% just 2 years ago. That's the Amazon effect, right? With Prime, with people really thinking, even if it gets baked into the numbers somewhere, they don't want to pay for shipping, not necessarily looking at the bottom line. How do you deal with constant demands for things like that?
Yeah, the space today is much more competitive than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, absolutely. One of the big changes in the industry is the free shipping. For catalogers, a lot of direct retailers many years ago, that used to be a profit center. Those days are long gone.
Right.
And so, and you need to adjust to what the customer's looking for. So at Oriental Trading, we have free shipping offers available every day. Typically, there's a minimum purchase required, and we have those available for our customers because that's something they're looking for. But what we're really finding the customer's looking for, I was in a listening lab earlier this week, talking to some of our customers, and what we're hearing is she's looking for value, she's looking for ways to save money, she's looking for deals, and that's where we play in with Oriental Trading. We have guaranteed lowest prices. She's looking for an easy way to pull together the solution she's looking for, whatever the event is, if it's a birthday party or graduation or wedding. And so we provide that complete solution, one-stop shop, with guaranteed lowest prices and with fast delivery, and we offer the free shipping, and you can get free shipping with Oriental Trading.
And Mike, I know one of the issues that Benjamin Moore's faced, and this has been something that you guys have been very public about, you're not going to sell to the big box stores. Buffett promised that years ago, and that's one of the, and I think I looked at independent dealers in 2014, they sold about 16% of house paint, and that is down from 25%. In 2014, they sold about 16% of house paint, and that is down from 25% in 2003. So how do you continue to expand when that distribution from the independent distributors is dropping off a bit?
Yeah, and Warren has been very public and actually made 2 videos of Valspar. So in our group, we have 2 things going for us. One is a premium product, and Warren has said, and we will never be the independent dealer group who knows more about paint than any of the alternatives, whether it's big box or the other competitors that you can buy paint from. But the independent dealer is growing, much to the disappointment, I think, of some of the companies that have predicted the demise of the independent dealer. We actually grew 79 more dealers, about 2.5% actual growth in new independent dealers' stores. So we feel we've got a group that is very dedicated to a customer that's very particular, and we feel
you can charge higher margin, higher prices, and get better margins.
It's a premium product. It has higher margins, and it's a better product. And if you've got the best product, as Benjamin Moore does, and if you have the most knowledgeable people, which is really an independent dealer, you can't go to a big box or one of the more available paint competitors and get the level of knowledge and service that an independent dealer can provide. It just can't. So we've got a formula that we really don't have to worry about the plethora of opportunities for people to buy paint in other places. We've got a market that's
something that maybe we wouldn't have anticipated at this point, given the stance from the BOJ